This is HBR News number 513. The Online Safety Act is here. Uber for her, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Relentlessly, we push into the breach. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison and Mike, and this is our news show. I'm trying to make the openings a little bit shorter so we can jump right into them. I feel like people, they're not, you guys know what we're about at this point. So, but I will say, let me just give you guys a summary because we got a lot going on. I had to trim it down to just a few stories so that our show had a reasonable sausage length. We're going to be talking about the latest news, such as the United Kingdom's new Online Safety Act. Uber has finally gone forward with their women-only service, which we actually covered on this show some years back when it was being proposed, I believe. Anti-misogyny is now going to be taught in UK schools and more, so stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So on the patron show, I have a couple of things because I couldn't decide what I wanted to talk about. One was, you guys know, we're not covering it on the show today, but Hulk Hogan passed away. It was like the day after our last news show, so it was really close to that other one. And not all of the commentary was positive about him because of his little spat with Gawker. And I thought about covering some of the reactions.
Well, it's mostly because of his little spat with the Republican Party, tearing his shirt off and going,
yeah,
Trumpomania. That's the real reason.
No, that's the real reason for sure. But they didn't like him anyway because of the Gawker thing, or at least they used it as, a method to take a shit on his legacy or try to. And then I thought, I thought I would look to see what Man Boobs has been up to. So I went to We Hunted the Mammoth. I think Hannah did a thing on this not that long ago.
Not too long ago.
On one of his articles. But I found this article that reads or is titled, "You'll Never Guess How Incels and MRAs Responded to a New UK Report Whitewashing the Manosphere." Or maybe you will. And I'd be curious to see what his take on it is. And then I had another thought. Because I also didn't make this a story. But apparently Sydney Sweeney has been making headlines and upsetting a lot of people because she made a jean commercial for American Eagle, and women in particular, well, maybe even exclusively, were really butthurt about it. And I have a couple of let's say TikToks or videos that women made, essentially, engaging in what I can only call mate suppression behavior, where they attack women that they perceive as a threat to them, and then they make it look like it's, but they use threat narratives around men to essentially attack other women. And as you can see in the post that I made, I reposted this one, and I said, nobody hates women more than other women. So we might look at that. I don't know. It depends on what I'm in the mood for. We're either going to be looking at the We Hunted the Mammoth article, or we're going to look at some Sydney Sweeney stuff. I think the Sydney Sweeney stuff could be more chillaxing. I think We Hunted the Mammoth could be rage inducing, especially because he's going after incels. Apparently they're Indian dudes. I don't know. I don't know what I'm not intersectional because I don't believe in that gobbledygook, but seems like a weird thing, a weird place to plant your flag. So yeah, it's either man boobs or it's good boobs. I don't know. We'll figure that out in the after show. So let me know what you guys think when we do that. And if you want to join us for the after show, please go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe to join us. The after shows are a lot more relaxed and chill. We just talk about whatever. I usually have a topic, and a lot of people have a lot to say on these things. So, and if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. That's where all of our content lives. So let's get that out of the way. Let's get into today's stories. All right, first things first. The UK Online Safety Act, which was an act that was put forward in 2023, was fully enacted in July 29th of 2025. It's a comprehensive law designed to regulate online platforms and enhance user safety, particularly for children in the UK. Administered by Ofcom, It mandates platforms to remove illegal and harmful content, including child sexual abuse material, content promoting suicide or self harm, and pornography, while requiring robust age verification systems. Non compliant companies face fines up to £18 million or 10% of global revenue, and Ofcom can block access to offending sites. Platforms like X, Reddit, and Discord have implemented age assurance measures, but a reported 1,400% surge in VPN usage suggests users are circumventing restrictions for privacy or access. Supporters, such as the NSPCC, praised the act for protecting vulnerable users, citing the removal of 291,270 child sexual abuse web pages in 2024, while critics, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, argue that it risks free speech and privacy through vague content definitions and potential encryption backdoors, which could enable excessive surveillance or data breaches. Other countries have adopted similar measures. Australia's Online Safety Act 2021 requires platforms to remove age inappropriate content, and France enforces age verification for adult sites. The EU's Digital Services Act, DSA, imposes risk assessments and user protections, but avoids mandatory monitoring, while China has explored limiting children's internet time, raising censorship concerns. J.D. Vance, U.S. Senator and 2024 Republican Vice President, has expressed concerns about the act's extraterritorial impact, warning in a 2024 statement that it could, quote, force American companies to censor speech to comply with UK laws, undermining U.S. sovereignty and First Amendment rights, end quote. Supporters counter that global cooperation is necessary to combat online harms. But critics like Vance and privacy advocates fear the act's broad scope could chill international platforms and strain diplomatic ties, with some calling its enforcement mechanisms overly punitive and prone to overreach.
There's a
Should I-
lot of stuff in these laws that doesn't need to happen. All right. They don't need to make the websites responsible for children at all, aside from content that's illegal shouldn't be on there. So, I don't think I need to tell you guys what that should be limited to. But you make the parents responsible. If your child accesses a porn site while in your home, you go to jail. Right? Because that's child neglect. You get treated the same way as if you didn't feed your child that day because you were busy doing stupid stuff that didn't have anything to do with your child. If your child develops a porn addiction, you get the same punishment as if your child ended up in the hospital for starvation because you weren't taking care of them. Like, you have the food, you have the money, you're not feeding your child. The government has a way they respond to that. You pay attention to what your kids are doing. Right? If you're going to do that, if you're going to make somebody responsible for what children are doing online, make the parents responsible. Right? The reason that our generation is seeing generation after us of kids not knowing how to do things and kids not knowing how to communicate with each other without texting each other on their phones and kids not being able to work at their jobs, put their phones down and work at their jobs, is because parents are allowing their children free reign on the internet. Parents are allowing their children to substitute devices for activity, right? Parents are allowing their children to go into chat rooms and websites that have weird content and all kinds of stuff without the parent knowing what the child is doing. They're allowing their children to have a computer in their room with the door closed and a phone in their pocket that mom or dad isn't checking to see what they're doing with it. Right? That's dangerous. You might as well give your kids a gun. If you let your kid handle a gun and you don't teach them gun safety, there are consequences that could go as far as you having to bury your child because your child did something stupid, or you going to jail and your child going to jail because your child did something stupid while another parent has to bury their child, right? There are websites that are just for kids or that are just for young people to goof around and stuff that kids are going into, and parents think, oh, this is safe, it's for kids, and they're getting picked up by child predators. And I've seen video, I've seen it demonstrated by individuals who tag predators online for the FBI, where you go into one of the messaging rooms or chat rooms or any type of discussion between players in these websites. Like Roblox is one of them. It sounds really innocent, right? Sounds like some kind of fun game for kids. But you can be in there for 10 minutes as a convincing 7-year-old and pick up 20 predators. Get messages from 20 predators. Right? So parents need to be the ones that are responsible for this. You can't this from like the schools can't prevent this. The websites can't prevent this. The government can't prevent this. Only parents have the capacity to prevent this. And we're going the opposite fucking direction right now, or at least we have been in the United States, right? The state trying to take over parenthood, the state trying to have schools tell parents, you can't know what your kids are doing in school. We're going to parent your children. You're going to just keep them at home for bedtime. But it's us now, right? That's exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. Everything else they're doing is unnecessary for protecting children. You don't need people's ID to protect children. You don't need any restrictions on what people can see online without an ID to protect children. In fact, children are more adept at getting around that than adults, right? And you certainly don't need to protect people from seeing who's protesting what to protect children from being picked up by predators or seeing inappropriate material for their age. So if if people are celebrating this, you maybe need to consider what the ulterior motive is, because the purpose of the law is what it's accomplishing, not what the name is. They put protect children in the name so that you feel bad about objecting to it, right? But the accomplishment is the government gets to tell you what you can and can't criticize. The government gets to tell you what you can and can't see as an adult. The government gets to tell websites what they can and cannot host, and not just material that comes from harming children, but also material that disagrees with what the government says. It also material that criticizes what the government is doing. Also material that demonstrates that you're not the only one who's mad about whatever it is that you're mad about. Right? And that's really dangerous. That's extremely dangerous. Just make it so that if you have the inappropriate material, like the exploitation of children being shown on your website, and you're allowing people to post that, and you're not, it can be shown that you're not doing anything to stop it, and you're not turning people putting that on your website over to law enforcement, then you go to jail. And if you're a parent and your child is accessing porn and you don't know, and other people find out, you have repercussions too. That's it. That's all that needs to be done. And the other aspect of this that really disturbs me is, like, every fucking day we hear about this system or that system, even government systems that should be the most secure systems because we're paying for those whether we want to or not, getting hacked, and all of people's private information that's on that system being made, public on the dark web or being sold, being used to steal from them and so on. Right, the local hospital system here in Dayton, where in my neck of the woods, where everybody that needs access to healthcare, that's their location or their local choice to go to. All of people's medical information just got exposed. Right, that's bad enough that there should never be a mandatory you must give private information to this online company. Right? It's people's credit cards get stolen that way. People's ID gets stolen that way. People's bank accounts get stolen that way. Everything that's in it gets taken. People's homes are getting stolen that way. Right? People's medical insurance is getting used by others. People are getting medical bills for care that's been provided to others that they don't have any responsibility for. Like every single time you put that information out there, you're making it vulnerable. It's like leaving money out on the sidewalk in front of your house. Right? So the government shouldn't be telling people that we have to do that. If people choose to do that, that's their choice. But the government shouldn't be making people do that. And I think that the only way that we can fight this is, we're going to have to actually start protesting it here in the United States. And it's going to have to be vehement enough that legislators become afraid to pass this kind of law. And it's also going to have to involve economic protest. If your information gets stolen, you sue. Take legal action. This can't stand. This is very dangerous, and it will do nothing, absolutely nothing, to protect children. Everything that people are calling a benefit of this law can be done without this law. Every bit of it. Don't let anybody fool you into thinking that protesting against this law is protesting against protecting children, because it's not. It's protesting against setting up a system that will allow your children to be enslaved and will allow your children to be basically stuck under a social credit system where their information is never private again, and everything they do can get them blocked from spending their money and enjoying their lives.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I suppose as a Brit, and I'm very sorry to start the argument with as a X or whatever, but I think it is relevant. As a Brit, as a UK man or whatever it is, the first and most obvious observation one can make about this is how bad the timing is. Because at a time when the biggest story, like day to day in the UK, is the one with all the nonsense, the foreign criminal nonsense being bussed into the country constantly at the taxpayer's expense. And while people across the country are protesting outside these migrant hotels and they're chanting, "Protect the children," like from these foreign nonsense, while that's going on, the UK government goes, "Okay, then, to protect the children, we're going to lock you out of the internet unless you dox yourself." Wait, what? How does that even protect? And if you don't like it, you're aiding and abetting child abuse. What are you, a nonce? It is surreal, ladies and gentlemen. It's bafflingly surrealist what the UK government does nowadays. It's beyond the point of anger and rage. It's just it's surreal how garishly they just flip reality upside down right in front of you and just expect you to go along with it. And that's where we are. If you complain about the nonces, you are the nonce. The actual nonces are not the nonces. The non-nonces are the nonces. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of noncing going on in the UK right now, and something needs to be done about it. And the thing is, it would be trivially easy to cut the noncing in half, at least half, if you just deported all the foreign nonces, the ones who illegally broke into the UK specifically so they could rape and pillage their way through the country at the expense of the taxpayer. If you could deport those people and also stop importing.
Oh, Mike? Mike, you might have muted yourself or something, or your cord. Can you hear me? He was getting a bit animated.
Yeah.
Mike, when you just figure that out because you dropped. But you're there. You're still in the call. Oh, he's gone. I'll see if he comes back.
I bet
Somebody asked
he had a
before.
computer failure.
He might have yanked a cord or something because he was getting animated. He's back.
There we go.
There he is. Okay.
Hello.
Yes. Are you there?
What? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just making
Okay,
sure
good.
that you're good. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, as I was saying, if you could deport the people doing that and also stop importing them in the first place, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, but there are white British men who rape children too. Yes, there are women also, by the way, and yeah, they should all be buried under the wood chipper. When it comes to the Jimmy Saviles of the world and the Hugh Edwardses and the Prince Andrews, we don't have anywhere to deport them to. So it's our problem. The problem would be much easier to solve if the BBC wasn't lying for a living and binging on cocaine while they rape infants, allegedly, in Minecraft. If and when we find the super predator nonsense among our own ranks, we will deal with them accordingly, i.e. wood chipper. And to be fair, we could do the same with the foreign nonsense. Just shove them in the wood chipper. But it shouldn't be our burden to expend the energy necessary to power an industrial wood chipper for the approximately 34 seconds it takes to mince a nonce. Fuck that. We should just stash these foreign perverts in the luggage compartment of an airplane destined for their home country. And if their wasted, frozen body isn't already a corpse, we dump it at the feet of their own corrupt government and let them fire up their own goddamn wood chipper. Or set them free to go raping and pillaging in a land where they belong. It's up to you. Sorry, Lauren just got back.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi.
So yeah, Donald Trump has demonstrated how easy it is to control your borders. You don't need a fucking bill full of pork. You just need a leader who is willing to control the borders.
Yeah,
If
you
you're-
guys need
if you're-
to find your Tom Homan.
Yeah,
some,
if you're,
like East Ender guy.
it's all the way up. If your government is not controlling your borders, it's because it does not want to, or worse, it wants not to.
Mhm.
And excuse me, princess, but I would have thought the first and foremost thing the government of a given country should do is draw a border around that country and solemnly set out to prioritize the interests of the people within that border. If instead of that, you are prioritizing the interests of people on the other side of that border, if everyone from beyond the borders of your country is a first-class citizen and everyone from inside it is just the help, what you've created there is the opposite of a country. It's a country-shaped hole in the fabric of countries. It
A
is a null
country?
space. Yes. They
A
put the
tree
cunt
of
in
cunts.
country music.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's a null space to be filled with other countries. It's like if you're playing Risk, right? You're many hours into the game, and one of you just goes, "Fuck it, I'm not playing anymore," and they just walk off. What do you mean you're not playing anymore? What are we supposed to do with your territories? I don't care. Just have them. What do we get? Yeah, but who has them? I don't know. Whoever gets there first. Fuck it. Like, you can't do that in Risk. It's not in the rules. It's just assumed that all the players are going to stick it out to the end. But when it comes to real life, large scale geopolitics, the robot pedo gremlins in charge of the UK could just go, fuck it. This is no longer a country. I will give all of my reinforcement cards to whoever attacks me first. The various territories of Europe are doing it too. We're playing a completely different game at this point. We're playing who can lose the game fastest. You can bend any rule you like. You can exploit any glitch you like. You just gotta speed run the destruction of your civilization. And the UK is winning at this point, at least in the European leg of the tournament. I think Canada might be ahead of us overall, and Japan and South Korea are outside favourites for the upcoming Asian tournament. It's how much you emasculate men. Ladies and gentlemen, have you noticed that's the cheat code for this anti-game within the game? The harder you emasculate your countrymen, the faster you implode your civilization. And what better way to emasculate the population than to arrest them for standing up for themselves? What better way than for a tyrant to commit crimes, large-scale crimes against the people, and then punish the people if and when they witness those crimes? That's what the Online Safety Act is doing, blocking content about illegal immigration. It took 12 hours from when it was declared law, but before even Twitter had to block coverage of protests against illegal immigration. Not just in the UK, but in various other European countries who just went along with it because they were fucking terrified that they would get fined 10% of their fucking income. To summarize, the UK government is trafficking criminals into the country on purpose. And if anyone in the general public bears witness to those crimes, the UK government will do whatever it can to track them down and kidnap them for that offense. This is mob rule, ladies and gentlemen. What I just described is exactly what the mafia does. Crime, 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 murder the witness, crime, 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 and so on. And that's all this is. It's the mob giving the mob the human right to murder the witness. As I've often said, the difference between a mafia and a government is the same as the difference between a cult and a religion. It's just a matter of scale. It's a matter of who comes out on top. And I'm not... crime is worse than religion a lot. I just want to make that clear. Crime is bad. Religion is, well, neutral. But they can manifest in similar gradients. It's a simile. You know this. And yeah, no, Britain is not being run by the British people anymore. It is being run by organized crime cartels, by rival gangs jockeying for position in the ashes of an already scorched earth. The only game left to play is who can scorch the ashes into even smaller particles. These people want to end Britain. Mm-hmm. By these people, I mean the Labour Party. And by end Britain, I mean they are deliberately going out of their way to collapse the country. Economically, educationally, militarily, on every possible vector, they intend to turn the UK into a failed state so they can blame it all on capitalism and conclude that the only solution is yet another communist experiment. This has been the playbook every fucking time. And it's by far the most likely explanation for why they've spent the last 28 years making the worst possible decisions they could have made with regard to the prosperity of the British people. And so have their sidekicks, the so-called Conservative Party. Like both of them, every time they come down on the side that fucks the British people the most. It can't be a coincidence. Getting it wrong half of the time is the baseline for a random number generator. Getting it wrong every...
Oh, Mike did it again.
Here goes again.
Oh, no, wait. He's in here, but he dropped again. It's all right. I was just going to say, because somebody asked me in the chat, and I'm just going to do this while I wait for Mike to come back in. He can just start talking when he gets in. They asked me if I could reread the law again. So it's very vaguely worded, which is part of the reason why it's a problem. Mike, you're back.
Hello.
It's basically like we're going to try to protect children from harmful or illegal content. Of course, like illegal in the UK means like anything really. I mean, this is the problem with when you're attacking speech. But go ahead, Mike. You had just dropped, so
yeah, no, this isn't incompetence. It's malice. The Labour Party is trying to destroy the country, and I'm sick of pretending that the Labour Party isn't just a Trojan horse for communism and always has been. Their goal has always been, as Marx's goal always was, to tear down society from top to bottom and start again in a brave new world where this brave new guy is in charge. And yes, he acts like a tyrant king who takes 90% of everyone's spoils and then spaffs it up the wall for nothing. But we don't call him a king. We call him a democratic republican or some shit. So this is all for your own good, peasant. Stop complaining. Trust me, comrade, or I will shoot you in your man pussy. Has your culture got as far as man pussies yet? Yes, we have, comrade. Excellent. Carry on. Enjoy your progress. Look, we, in terms of kings, we had a bad king once in England. Well, we had a fucking bunch of them, but we had a really bad one called King John. He was so bad that we had to come at him with a scroll going, "Oi, back off, dickhead." And it worked. It kind of worked. Bro backed off. And now we can actually have our own private property. Eventually. Sort of. Maybe one day. But the Magna Carta was not just a scroll. It was backed up by the force of the will of the people. Well, the will of the barons, I suppose. But the point is, it was a force too mighty for the king to ignore. And that's what it's going to take this time around to stop this downward spiral. The implied force behind the will of the people. And we've only got 4 years for it to happen because Labour has only got 4 years to collapse the country and bring about communism before we have any more of those pesky elections. I'm not saying you should fight, gentlemen, because my government would arrest me if I said that. And I'm not saying you should flee the country, gentlemen. I'm just saying you might want to hang around in the vicinity of the fire exit, like I am, like with your foot in the door, because that whole evacuation area is going to get pretty crowded at some point in the next 4 years. Do it before the hyperinflation, not a moment after. What hyperinflation, Mike? To be continued. Anyway, Rule Britannia, Day's fault. And God bless America for allowing me to say these things. I love it here.
So yeah,
You know why no government is going to do what I suggested and hold parents accountable instead of websites? Because the majority of kids that are getting exploited like that, the majority of kids that are online unsupervised, that predators have free access to because nobody's keeping track of what their kids are doing, are living in single mother homes. And that would be those moms that would be going to jail.
Yeah. Although I think the Online Protection Act or the Online Safety Act is really not about safety and it's not about children. It's about
Of course
power
not.
and control. And, Mike is hitting it on the head when he talks about this being a commie problem, which I go after. This is why I go after the commies so hard as often as I do. This is why I don't accept that there are commies that are well intentioned or might be good for men's rights. I think that's ridiculous. So I will go hard on them as much as possible. And if you make the argument that there is a scenario somewhere on Earth where a communist can be good for men's issues, then I would ask that you also bring me a Nazi that's also good for men's issues. And if that makes you gasp, guess what? You've been programmed. But anyway, so yeah, this is fucked up, and I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I think that the only thing that the U.S. can be, because as an American, is hopefully like an example of at least pointing in the right direction. Because don't get it twisted, the United States' freedom of speech is constantly under attack as well. And remember, this act was also, or something like it, was also pushed through the European Union and Australia. So, like, this isn't just a UK problem. Canada is probably going to follow suit if they're not already doing it. I know that cops will show up at your door if you post shit they don't like. That's basically what this is about. So, anyway, um, just hang in there, if my British friends, and but you might have to like start taking serious considerations onto either doing something about it. I don't know. As an American, that's not all I'm gonna say about it. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. It was really the biggest story that we had, but thought it was a very important one. And we're gonna move on to the next story. So Uber is planning to roll out a new feature in the US aimed at female users of the ride sharing app. The new women preference settings will give women riders and women drivers the ability to select to toggle on a settings and receive only women riders or drivers in response. Uber's women preference mode initially launched in Saudi Arabia in 2019. There were women drivers in Saudi Arabia. I thought they weren't allowed to do that. With Australia, Mexico, Canada, and now the US being added later. Uber's vice president of operations, Camille Irving, said the following statement, quote, "After hearing from women riders and drivers around the world, it was clear. Many want the option to match with other women. When we make our platform better for women, we make it better for everyone. It's about giving women more choice, more control, and more comfort when they ride and drive." End quote.
There are only two things that are actually wrong with this. The first one is they're not promoting this as freedom of choice. They're promoting it as a thing that needs to be done because men make women unsafe, which is bullshit, and it's a lie. And it's very sexist. The other thing is they're not giving men the same freedom of choice. So they're discriminating against men by offering women a service that is not available to men. The ability to choose the sex of the driver that will be driving you. And that's really something that in the United States a company could be sued for. And I'm not suggesting any individual maybe go and contact the attorneys at the National Coalition for Men and see if they are interested in taking up a class action lawsuit in the United States on behalf of all men against the company for not giving men the same option in order to avoid the threat of false accusations. But if somebody did suggest that, it would be a very good suggestion.
So is this going to be another one of those situations where they somehow figure out a way to determine whether or not a customer is female? They add all those women to their database, and then their entire database gets leaked for all the world to see. This is how much stuff we've got going on this week, folks. We don't even have space to talk about the T app and all that shenanigans. Brian and Allison did a feature piece about it yesterday. Go check it out if you haven't already. But today, it's just a casual aside while we talk about a story that looks very much like a here we go again. It's hard to estimate the sheer size of the market when it comes to women claiming special treatment over men. Women will spend billions of dollars in the pursuit of avoiding men, confronting men, and avoiding the men they've confronted, and confronting the men they've avoided, and so on. I suppose men might also be willing to put capital into the prospect of men getting their own safe spaces away from women, but it's effectively illegal for men to do that at this point. It's not technically illegal, like it's just like it's not technically illegal for those folks in the Arkansas outback region or wherever it is to create a whites-only community. That's another story we're not covering officially, just tangentially veering into. But here we are. And now that the general public has been made virally aware that there is a community somewhere in the Arkansas outback that has the audacity to reject non-white people, I've no doubt there are race-baiting law sharks circling the place, doing whatever they can to shut it down. Just keep putting pressure on it until that white-only community is getting violently invaded by outraged kikes and their nigger slaves. Sorry, that's what it is. And they have no choice but to scatter into the wilderness, lest they all be diversified to death. In the same way, it's effectively impossible for men to have men-only spaces, even though it's technically legal when it's private. That male space will be brute forced out of existence. And the government, which is supposed to be in the business of protecting the inalienable rights of law-abiding citizens from the tyranny of the majority, mysteriously turns a blind eye when it's men and or white people who are being violently terrorized by everyone else, or indeed bureaucratically terrorized by the government itself, or indeed violently terrorized by the government itself, like in Britain. That's in your future, America, unless big ting happens soon. You got to make big ting happen.
Big ting.
Too late. And yeah, the other thing, I have to ask Uber the same thing I would ask T, the app that only allows verifiably female users. How are you verifying this? I know you're taking pictures with webcams and snapshots of driver's licenses and whatnot. So is that an admission that you can tell a person's gender by what their face looks like and whether their ID says male or female? Given that you are dealing with feminists, and you are necessarily dealing with feminists, how are you dealing with all the complaints that you must be getting from the men who identify as women, and their allies and advocates? You all must be getting complaints along the lines of, your facial recognition software has misgendered me. I know I have a strong jaw, but my jaw identifies as a weak jaw. How dare you? And yes, I know it says M on my driver's license, but that's only because Orange Man is forcing me to misgender myself. This is transphobia of the highest order, and I won't let you get away with it. And how could it not be transphobia? How can an app determine biological sex through some kind of biometric data and not be accused of transphobia under the broad-ass umbrella definition of transphobia? Like, how are you getting away with it when you obviously have thousands of feminist Karens willingly admitting themselves into your ranks? They can't all be TERFs, surely. But this is how it is. Feminists don't care about transphobia when it comes to the matter of shitting on men and defaming and destroying men and giving themselves special spaces away from men. They don't care. They will completely overlook transphobia because transphobia was only ever a secondary or tertiary munition in their arsenal of misandric weapons of mass destruction. When it comes to the crunch, they know the difference between a man and a woman. They know it can be determined instantaneously, phenotypically, using the facial recognition software we all have in our brains. And they know it can be determined genetically if need be. They only pretend that there is no difference if and when it helps them marginalize men. And they will admit there is a difference if and when it helps them marginalize men. Just like they will allow foreign nonces to rape and pillage your country as long as it helps them marginalize men, the men with whom they are familiar. It's relational aggression, ladies and gentlemen. And when I say ladies and gentlemen, I mean ladies, because it is very much a lady thing, although not exclusively. They would rather attack their own men and their own families than give a moment's notice to the barbarians at the gates of their society. There is another word for this phenomenon, and yes, it's oikophobia. Drink your drink, for I said the word. But a point I don't make often enough is oikophobia, aka relational aggression, is very much a female condition for the most part. And yes, I would go so far as to say xenophobia is a majority male condition. We have evolved this way. Men defend the tribe by patrolling the physical boundaries of that tribe, so they can defend it from outsiders. Whereas women control the tribe from within by patrolling its societal rules. And we're at a very strange time in history where men are not allowed to do that man thing anymore. They're not allowed to defend anyone from outsiders, whereas women are encouraged, incentivized, and hyperfixated on doing their thing, where they micromanage their own tribe. And so we place impossible standards on our own tribe while imposing no restrictions whatsoever on those who would invade us, on those who are invading us. And it's only going to get worse until we can recognize the source of this problem, men being unmenned and women being hyper-womened. Until we can snap out of this shit, it's only going to get worse. And that's why we talk about what we're talking about here at Mounted News Honey Badger Radio. leave a like and a comment. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So I just want to say that I think this is a self-correcting problem for a number of reasons. I think that it is inevitable that a trans woman is going to complain that they're not getting the same treatment. They basically complain about everything, and they intentionally put themselves in situations where they could be victimized so that they could complain, in particular on social media. So they're going to run into problems with that. This is a powder keg, okay, waiting to explode. On the other hand, trans men are going to complain because they're going to feel excluded by it because they're men. And they're going to say, wait, I'm marginalized in a way that is unique to me because I'm a trans man. Where's my Uber driver? Where are the trans male Uber drivers for the trans male Uber passengers? Which brings me to the next thing. I think most Uber drivers are men. So women looking to use this app are not going to find rides, that they're going to have a harder time finding them. So I think that's funny too, because they're going to have a harder time getting to where they need to go, because if they're using this feature, because there's going to be fewer women driving because more men drive Ubers. And then lastly, I wouldn't want a female Uber driver anyway. Women generally are worse drivers, and they're also worse passengers. So could you imagine a woman driving another woman somewhere, and that woman is being a backseat driver to the woman that's trying to drive, and she's like, it's going to be hilarious, and I think that it's a self-correcting issue. I think it won't last long. I mean, sure, maybe in Saudi Arabia it works, but I think that this is going to be funny. But it is it's discrimination and all that. But personally, like, I believe in freedom of association anyway, like 100%. Like, you want to have an all-white city, I don't care. I really don't. I'm all 100% for freedom of association. I don't give a shit. The only time I think it's an issue is if it's the government doing it because we pay them. But like when it comes to, citizens and the private sector associating with whoever they want and discriminating in whatever, I don't care. I think it should be all legal. I think that all of these allegations of bigotry and discrimination, they're all just tools to control people's behavior. I don't agree with any of it, in my personal opinion. I know that that's too much for a lot of people, but I think that it's like freedom of association is everything, and we do it already anyhow. So like, if women are going to do like, why isn't there an Uber that's male for men only? Because men don't give a shit. that's why they're not threatened by everybody. They basically just go about their business, and a lot of them, they have their own cars. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. But because I mean, Hannah and Mike, they basically covered it pretty well. So let us know what you guys. Oh, I got some super chows I really got to read. I skipped them, so I'm gonna read those, and then we're going to move on to the next story. So first, this morning at 10:26, somebody named Cat Manigan gave us $100. Thank you. I don't know if this was like to support the fundraiser or what, because it is a large amount. But then they said, consider using rumble.com. Well, you're in luck. We do. We are on Rumble, and we have been on Rumble for years now. And all you got to do is look us up on Rumble, HB Radio. It's there. I'm currently looking at the Rumble chat. Shout out to the Rumble gang. You can just join us, but thank you for the recommendation. I did take it up because I know that Rumble is growing, and I think that we should be posting there. And I've been saying this for a long time, and I'm glad that we do. So thank you, Catman, again. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's what it looks like, for the Super Chow. And then Meredith G gave us $5 on the show and said, HBR News number 513. I'm going to point out that anyone who was a federal employee during the 2000s and 2010s has to have lifetime monitoring of their credit because the U.S. federal government's payroll system was hacked, and some have been provided multiple lifetime monitoring due to different hacks. That was like something that happened a while back, right?
That's something that, this is everywhere. I can't remember which city it was. There was a pipeline that was the electronic systems for that were hacked, and they couldn't get supplies for petroleum supplies for their city, not just the local gas stations and everything, but for like the city buses and so on. Like the whole city just about shut down. That was in Florida, and the pipeline was on the East Coast. There have been instances where cities in the United States have had like their utility systems have been hacked, and the city operations systems have been hacked. And so these hackers do pretty much the same thing that the FBI virus does to your computer. They break the system and hold it hostage, and all you can get and send out are communications back and forth with the hackers who demand ransom. And there have been cities that have paid tens of thousands of dollars in ransom because they can't find and catch these hackers. So this idea that the government is going to force you to hand over your identity information, your personally identifying information, like if you drop your prescription bag, you take the pill bottle out of it and you drop it on the ground at CVS, and somebody else picks it up and gets your information before a CVS employee can grab it and put it in the trash. Those kinds of lawsuits have gone through where the company has been held responsible. A company like CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid or Walmart, any company that has a pharmacy, like they've been held responsible for that information getting into the wrong hands, even when the individual was completely careless with their information, because it's medical. But the government wants you to give your driver's license and other personally identifying information that can be used to get into all of your financial shit to strangers on the internet so you can watch porn or see if somebody's protesting or talk about politics or complain about the government. Oh, wait, no, you're not allowed to do that.
All right. So thank you, Meredith, for that, and we're gonna move on to the next story. So let's see here. So this one is not a written up thing, but you shared this, Hannah, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I was going to read a couple of the highlights. So there's a guy named Gory DeAngelis, and he is apparently a school choice evangelist. So he's a big pro. He's a pro school choice guy. I can respect that. I think that's great. And he said this on a post recently. I think it was like yesterday or the day before, the 25th. So it was like 4 days ago. Breaking, the nation's largest teachers union just scrubbed their 2025 handbook from their website. Too bad for them, I saved the 434-page document, and he includes a thread. So I'm going to read a couple of the things from the handbook that they tried to get rid of, that he has basically dug up. So I found their handbook 2 days ago, exposed some of their radical agenda on X. The National Education Association handbook says, here's some of the stuff from the handbook. These are the things that our public schools, and I know this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, is going to be, is trying to push into our kids. The National Education Association handbook says educators must acknowledge the existence of white supremacy culture as a primary root cause of institutional racism, structural racism, and white privilege. Educators must also work to prohibit institutionally racist systems. And then there's like a blurb from the book here. And then he says the NEA, it's the National Education Association, will push strategies fostering the eradication of institutional racism and white privilege perpetuated by white supremacy culture. School districts must provide training in cultural competence, implicit bias, restorative practices and techniques, and racial justice. But they're not teaching these kids critical race theory, guys. The National Education Association believes that in order to achieve racial and social justice for descendants of formerly enslaved people, educational reparations must be made. And it's not just the black civil rights stuff. There's all the other things. It's feminism, it's communism, it's everything else, right? The National Education Association believes that every phase of governance and on all decision-making levels of the association, there should be a minority participation at least proportionate to the identified ethnic minority population of that geographic level. And here's a bit on homeschooling. It says that homeschooling programs based on parental choice cannot provide the student with a comprehensive education experience, which he is like, obviously they're against school choice, but they really are against homeschooling. So you'll see a lot of that. Actually, a lot of the people that I know that live around here homeschool their kids, and their kids are smarter than the kids that I have subbed for at the same like grade level. So, the National Education Association's handbook basically erases Jews from the Holocaust. NEA shall promote the celebration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day on January 27th annually on its website and through other appropriate media to recognize the more than 12 million victims of the Holocaust from different faiths, ethnicities, races, political beliefs, genders, and gender identification, abilities, disability, and other targeted characteristics. Well, actually, I think that's actually more true. I think a lot of Christians were killed during World War II, and not just the Jews. But you ever heard of the Holodomor as well? Anyway, so
Yeah.
but like other than that though, he basically has exposed these people for not educating your kids but programming them to be activists. So I thought I would share that. I don't know if there's any other like really
Yeah,
good
there's
highlights
one of the
in here,
main
but
reasons I shared this. Like I
Mhm.
the DEA stuff that's getting, all of the stuff that's getting taught that's bad. We've been talking about that, but there's another underlying reason, all right? So historically in the United States, the reason that unions have existed was because when you get corporations that are big, that have work that is being done that is dangerous and very demanding on the body of the individual and so on, there needed to be collective bargaining between the workers and the corporation in order to protect the workers from exploitative, unsafe working conditions that could have been made safer, and bad pay policy where the workers are not getting paid what their work is worth, and they would negotiate as a group instead of individually, because you can tell one guy, well, everybody else is getting paid this, I don't see why you want more. But it's harder to tell the entire company, everybody else is putting up with this, why aren't you putting up with this, when it's the entire list of employees, right? And that was the reason that unions cropped up, right? The reason the unions cropped up didn't have anything to do with imposing a political perspective of diversity, or uh, controlling what people think about race and ethnicity and all that stuff. They didn't crop up to make people gynocentric. They didn't crop up to make people question their sexuality. They cropped up to make sure that if a man was trying to support his family and he went and took a job where he could be killed on the job because of the difficulty and danger in the job, that he would be fairly compensated, right? And that if the employer could make the job reasonably safer, that they wouldn't, throw people away and treat people like cannon fodder in the workplace. And unions like the NEA are creating, and it's not the only union, they're creating a system within the union where the employee gets no support from the union in terms of the rights of the employee, the needs of the employee. The workplace isn't being protected against threats. The workplace isn't being protected against exploitative overtime or any other worker-related protection. Instead, the unions are wasting the union dues on this shit. And it's not just the teachers union. The teachers union is the most blatant and obvious. They should not be deciding curriculum, by the way. The teachers union is, their function is supposed to be just what I said, protecting the teachers from employer abuses of the employee. Right? The people that should be determining curriculum should be the school boards. The school boards should be beholden to the parents and not the unions, and the local community and not the unions, because the local community are the people who are going to be hiring those students after they get out of school, which is designed to prepare students to go out and get a job when they become adults. But unfortunately, following the lead of the teachers unions, the retail workers unions, medical workers unions, unions for pretty much any, like, I don't know if like the big the truckers unions and the manufacturing unions are doing this, but I do know that the unions for a lot of the jobs where a lot of the workers are women and they're not vigilant as to what their unions are doing and using their money for, have become like this. If you actually need union representation in your workplace, they don't do jack shit for you. But if your workplace doesn't have enough DEI policies and doesn't promote the celebration of having a sexuality, the celebration of having a sexuality in June or July or whatever month it is, and the celebration of being female 1 month a year, and the celebration of being black 1 month a year, and so on, like, then they get on them over that, right? They don't get on them if you're forced to work more overtime than union regs say you should be forced to work. They don't get on them if you're made to do things that the union regs say you're not supposed to be made to do because they're unsafe. For example, when I worked for a retail outlet as a shift supervisor, and one of my duties involved taking the money that was earned that day to the bank and depositing it. And I literally would leave the store with a bag full of cash and go to a bank and deposit it. The union regs said, that had to be done before sundown. It had to be done before 5 p.m. So, or 5:30 p.m. So if sundown hit before 5:30 p.m., if it started getting dark, I had to leave. Like, there were some days when it had to be done before 5 p.m. because of that. And if it wasn't done before that time, it wasn't done that day. It would be put in the safe and done the next day, which was, the company basically said you can't do that, so it has to be done before that time period. No excuses, right? And my manager didn't do it during her shift, and I came in at 6 o'clock, and she didn't tell me she didn't do it. And so at 10 p.m. when I start counting down the registers, there's the bag in the safe. And the next day she wrote me up for not taking it. And I called my union rep. Oh, well, it's only one write-up. It's not a big deal, right? Every time someone at my store had a problem like that, oh, it's only one write-up. It's not that big of a deal. And then I watched a colleague get fired because it was only one write-up, happened multiple times with things that were against union policy. So when I talk about this, I'm not talking out of my ass. I'm talking about it from experience. It's one of the reasons I got out of retail, because there are more and more companies requiring you to be part of the union that doesn't do anything to represent you when the employer violates union regulations. And even the union stewards aren't standing up for their colleagues in those situations. So yeah, this represents the breakdown, not just of our ability to avoid communism, but the breakdown of a system that was initially created by men to protect men from exploitative and harmful work conditions. And now it's being used for everything except that, because women got involved and decided that it should be, babysitter, a political babysitter instead.
Yeah. Fuck unions, though. Okay, so they're basically just communist organizations. I read through
Yeah,
some
they
of
are
this.
now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that a case could be made that they always were, but they used like actual issues that working class people had to get their foot in the door and say, "We'll help you," as they like rub their hands together and then create what unions I think always have been. I've always been critical of unions for as long as I understood them. So, um and I think there's a lot of organized crime shit that goes on there too, just like with our
Yeah.
governments. So yeah, fuck unions, but I get it. I mean, I get the sympathy. All right, let me see. Did I get any super chats or chows? No. Okay. Let me know if you guys send a super chow if you have something to say about that story. We got one more to go. Let's go ahead and knock this one out. Let me know what you guys think about that other one in the comments. All right, we're back on the UK again. So the UK has introduced an anti-misogyny lessons in schools. See how this is coming together? See that? It's like we're talking about the UK and they're getting authoritarian, and then we're talking about schools and like the school unions and their work, and now we're doing a mix. We brought it together. We got peanut butter, we got jelly, and now we got a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, so anyway,
Peanut butter jelly sandwiches are pregnant lady food. Fucking fight me.
I think they're good, but I wouldn't eat them. It was delicious when I was a kid. The UK has introduced anti-misogyny lessons in schools, said to be implemented under updated relationships, health, and sex education guidance, all things that probably shouldn't be taught in schools anyway, by September 2025, with mandatory compliance by September 2026. Mandatory compliance, prompted by the Netflix series Adolescence. Yes, it did. This was not an accident, which depicts a young boy influenced by online misogyny committing a violent act. The initiative aims to combat the rise of toxic masculinity and manosphere ideologies propagated by figures like, guess who? Andrew Tate. The lessons, targeting primary and secondary students, focus on fostering healthy relationships, emotional literacy, that's fucking made up commie gobbledygook, consent, and digital literacy to counter harmful online content, including incel culture, deep fakes, and pornography. The Department of Education reports that 54% of 11 to 19-year-olds have witnessed misogynistic comments, highlighting the urgency of addressing this issue. Supporters, including Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, argue the lessons are vital to equip young people, especially boys, with tools to resist harmful online influences and promote respect, citing real-world incidents like the 2024 Southport stabbings. The critics, however, warn of potential backfire, arguing that poorly designed lessons could alienate boys, reinforce rebellion, or fail to address root causes like poor parenting or lack of male role models. What are you talking about? With only a third of secondary school staff being male. Some, like JD Vance, expressed concerns about overreach, suggesting such policies could unfairly target boys and will, or oversimplify complex social issues, potentially ignoring misandry or broader societal failures.
Well, why do they need to call it anti-misogyny? What hole do they think they're filling with that sly little neologism there?
Yeah,
As though
anti-misogyny.
as though anti-misogyny is this brand new concept that's never been explored before, despite you know how school children have been taught the feminist framework, the feminist curriculum for I think 4 generations now. It started with the boomers, hence the 60s and all that shit. And with each successive generation, feminism has dug deeper and deeper into our education system. And at this point, there's scarcely anything left but parasite matter and the holes they leave behind. With everything we've been taught wrapped up in a marketable blob called feminism, could none of it have been described as anti-misogyny? How are they defending this? Why are you calling it anti-misogyny instead of just feminism? You keep telling us that feminism just means equality, and you would think that would cover anti-misogyny. And it kind of did for a while until we all got sick of your shit, and the word feminism became so toxic that they had to reinvent it as anti-misogyny. But what you've implied there is that feminism is not anti-misogyny. And that's correct. It's not. Feminism is just misandry. Feminists will say the most misogynistic shit, and they get away with it because they have party privilege. The party being misandry. That's it. It's a single issue party. Let us hate men forever over our irrational fear of a nightmare past that never happened. It's okay to hate women as long as you hate men even more. And I wish I had a nutshell. I guess that was the nutshell in which to put all this in. But please remember this whenever anyone compares the quote-unquote red pill community to feminism, as though they are even close to the same point in the gradient. No school, and I mean no school, anywhere in the world is teaching children to be red pill, whatever the fuck that even means. They're not teaching children to even consider the possibility that feminism is wrong in any way whatsoever. They are teaching children to dogmatically believe that feminism is right and good and true and unassailable in any context. That men oppress women everywhere and always have. And when I say children, I mean all the way down to kindergarten. It has indeed got that far. It started in universities, but with 18 to 21-year-olds or whatever, and then it soaked its way down the system like a funky green mold that smells of eggs. And it does smell of eggs. So please, in the light of stories like these, do not tell us with a straight face that there is any male equivalent of feminism in terms of power and influence, a male equivalent of feminism where they indoctrinate children from the earliest possible age to believe that women oppress men everywhere and always have. Find me that cult. Find me that country. Find me anyone who believes that and has systematically invaded an entire education system on that assertion. Fuck off, mate. And then fuck back on again. And then fuck up and down and sideways and then fuck off again. All right, that'll do. I think that'll do. Stop.
There's an interesting thing that I noticed about feminist men, right? There's two very distinct, sort of heavily divided groups of them. There's the feminist men who are under 30, who drop out, most of them, from feminism at some point in their lives because they figure out really quickly that it's bullshit. And it doesn't do anything for them, and it's not really that good for women either. Right? And then there's the ones that are lifelong feminist men. And the ones that are lifelong feminist men are usually malicious, manipulative assholes that are in it for something other than a belief that they are helping women in any way. It's usually a means of controlling other people, a means of bullying other people, a means of making money off of other people, a means of self-aggrandizement. It's almost never genuinely about belief that they're doing anything to help women, unless they have an IQ of like 60, right? It's that bad. They have to have a disabling level of low IQ to get to say 50 and still be a feminist and genuinely think that they're helping women by being involved in feminism. So an effort like this, boys might be feminist when they're in school if they're indoctrinated by this, maybe, if they don't see through it right away. And they might even be feminist while they're in college for the same reason. They might even be feminist up into their 20s, till they start having to live on their own outside their parents' home, pay their own bills, and they start dating women that are, putting up profiles on dating apps just so that they can get free dinners, and they're not actually interested in a relationship with anybody. And they won't go Dutch. You'll know those gals that they won't go Dutch on the first date. But in any case, they'll get enough bullshit from women, and they'll also see enough damage to women from feminism that they will stop believing the bullshit sometime around 25 to 30 years old. And by the time they hit the age where you shouldn't trust anyone over that age, they will no longer fall for that bullshit. Right? So, I don't believe that feminists are unaware of that. I think feminists know that too, because they are always complaining about how bad feminist men are, and how many of them abandon feminism, and the ones that don't seem to be all assholes, right? Or sexual predators. So they're not giving the ones that stay a pass. They're just mad about the ones that they can't use feminism to control. So there is an alternate purpose for this, clearly, because it's not teaching boys something that it's going to carry through their whole lives. And it's been demonstrated undeniably over and over again that if you actually want boys to grow up to be well-adjusted, hardworking, diligent, responsible young men who treat the people around them the way they want to be treated, and don't use violence and bullying as their primary means of handling conflicts of interest between themselves and other people. You raise them in a home with a father. You raise them in a home with a father who is involved, who is invested in the welfare of the child, who will not only go out and earn a living to support the child, but who will come home and through play with the child teach him things like sportsmanship and respect for others' boundaries and autonomy and a sense of fairness and a sense of recognition of his impact, his behavior's impact on other people's desire to be around him and things like that. The same thing men do for their daughters. Same thing fathers do for their daughters, right? But they don't want to do that because this issue isn't about raising boys to grow up to be good men who will have happy lives, who will be respected members of their community and contributors to their community. It's about sliding in a means of mind control to your school system. And it's easy to do it if you convince women that they have to be afraid of the way boys think, right? This threats of misogyny and feminist ideals as a means of addressing that misogyny. It's been a long time since I've talked about this. I think I've talked about it a few times, though. Feminism is the wedge that authoritarian micromanagement ideologues in power use, the establishment uses, to get in between you and your boundaries, your personal boundaries, and the boundaries between your family and your government, and including your children, right? So this is not being used just to demonize boys and men. This is being used to convince women to use the school system to control political thought. And it's the same thing as the laws we were talking about earlier. You scare women, they don't think about the implications of the thing that they are accepting. They think about the initial benefit that they are being told that women will receive, which is control over male thought in a world where they are told that misogyny is rampant and dangerous. We already have laws against violence, and we already have laws that specifically address violence that is motivated by anything that feminists would call misogyny. So we don't really have anything else that we need to do to address, as a society, to address that kind of behavior, other than maybe stop taking fathers out of homes, because fathers are the ones that raise their boys not to engage in those kind of behaviors, not to be violent, not to be stupid, right? But these laws, the whole point of these laws is so that a few years down the line, they can introduce, like they've already introduced the gender ideology, but they'll introduce things like, and they've already introduced the racial ideology and stuff like that, right? They'll introduce things like almost a worship of government authority. They'll introduce, you can't question it if it comes from the government. They'll introduce you can't keep your money because other people might need it, and it's selfish if you do that. So you have to redistribute your wealth so that everybody has the same thing. They'll start introducing, you don't have to own stuff. Right? You should lease everything, or everything should just be communal property, and nobody should have any control over it except through a governing body. And they might even introduce, if your neighbors are criticizing the government, you should turn them in. If your parents are criticizing the government, you should turn them in. If your siblings are criticizing the government, you should turn them in. That's what this is for. It has absolutely nothing to do with misogyny and everything to do with establishment control over thought.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. I got 2 Rumble rants, and then we're gonna head into the patron show. Talk a little bit about Sydney Sweeney. and the triggered reaction thereof. So Sean Mao gave us $1. This was in relation to the previous story, I think. And he said, I knew someone who was set up by the union for a safety issue. He, his union steward, and his manager were all let go.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
And then NovaFan21 gave us $1 and said, I can't wait for the day the UK's feminist effort backfires so hard that boys decide they benefit from male privilege and patriarchy. UK government, we need to ban men even harder now. Well, I think the fact that they're like cracking down so hard in all these different ways is actually evidence that they're afraid. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that line from Star Wars, you know, the tighter, what is it that Leia said to Grand Moff Tarkin?
The more you tighten your grip,
the more
the
systems
more
slip through your
sort of,
fingers.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
And
more
I think
systems
that's
will
what they're
slip through
doing.
your
I think
fingers.
that they're really trying, and I think Trump getting into the White House, honestly, is a big part of it, because it's like they had all the pieces in place and this thing didn't go the way it should have. I think that's also true of others like Bukele of El Salvador and Javier Milei, who's apparently turning things around in Argentina. And there's all this populist stuff that's rising up. Japan is rising up right now. I think Italy, and some other countries in Europe, they're not like changing completely, but there's like a shift happening. So I think that's why they're like really cracking down, especially on the speech thing. And I didn't talk about collective shout and what they're doing with games, but I do think it's related. But that's because I just had too much to cover. We could talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that. I think there's a relationship between collective shout and what's going on with our education and what's going on with, you know, the Online Safety Act and all that. I think it's all connected. I think there's a concerted, combined effort to control thought, because when we went the internet, we became global in terms of the conversation broadening, which is like a double-edged sword for them, right? So on the one hand, they could spread their propaganda to more people and they could like get it from any number of places and use social media, but on the other hand, there were more normal people who could also get the word out of like dissenting opinions, and you can't censor everybody, you know. So yeah, anyway, well, we gotta wrap
And
it up here. Yeah.
you know how the UK requires a license to watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a quite similar thing happening to the internet right now. Because I'm sitting here going, "What next, UK? We have to dox ourselves just to watch the TV. We have
Yeah.
we have to endure an army of government goons knocking on our doors, telling
Yeah.
us like you can't watch TV unless you give us all of your information." And yeah, it's as bizarre as the idea of a TV license sounds to countries who don't have a TV license. It's the same thing is happening with the internet. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you want to say things or listen to things or watch things on the internet, have you got a license for that? That's all it is. Like if you want to witness things on the internet, you need to dox yourself to the government. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Don't worry about it. What? You're a fascist if you don't like it. Fuck's sake.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go now into the Patreon show. We can talk more about it there, and we're gonna look at some of this stuff. So if you want to join us for that, then become a member. Go to feedthebachelor.com/subscribe. And hopefully we'll see you guys in the patron show, either watching on YouTube or in the actual chat itself. And you can give us your opinions to our faces, to our digital avatar faces. But anyway, with all that said, if you guys, we're going to wrap it up there. So thank you guys for coming on. Thank you, Hannah and Mike, for joining us. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave me a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed in the show today. And please, please, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thanks so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines. dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.